Thanks for having me, and thanks for joining the session. I think it fits really well in what we just heard. There will be some overlap, but we will focus on investment opportunities. That's the topic of our discussion here with our fantastic guests. We will hear about precision fermentation for sure. So we will go beyond the burger because we are already way beyond that, and we will also go beyond plant-based in this discussion for sure. I would like to start with Marilis because you're representing one very active early stage investor in animal-free sustainable food solutions, and you are covering cellular agriculture, precision fermentation, and plant-based. So I would like to hear from you what do you think where the biggest opportunities are now, starting high level in all these areas, please.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you, Albert, for inviting me. With Sustainable Food Ventures, we started in late 2020, and in this timeline of 2.5 years, we've invested in 56 future food companies across all the technologies that Albert just mentioned. But I want to separately also bring fungi and mushrooms to the stage as a technology. They always want to be mentioned separately from plant-based, cell-based, and fermentation technologies, because if we remember from biology, they're a kingdom of their own. So I feel like them being their own technology is definitely worth the mention. So just looking at really high level, I feel like one of the things that I am excited about and happy to see is how seafood is becoming the next new frontier. Maybe it's the today's frontier, and what is more distant in the future is something we can discuss later. But having been investing in the last 3 years, I feel like we started with land meat, so cows, chicken, and all these other animals, but now we're really tackling the ocean seafood. And I know today's topic is plant-based, but as Albert said, we're going to go a bit beyond or a lot beyond of the plant-based technologies. So I feel like technologies that are longer to mature, which means that they're maybe technically more challenging, or they're just not equally distributed everywhere around the world, such as cell-based or cultured. I feel like those are the ones that really excite me, and specifically in the seafood space, because thus far I have not yet been wowed away by a plant-based, let's say sushi crate fish fillet piece that would actually convince me that this is tuna or this is salmon or eel or anything that you would have in a traditional sushi restaurant anywhere in the world. So if anyone has had that, please come find me later. I'm happy to discuss more and then have that experience.
Thanks, Marilis. Yeah, you're also addressing already the shortcomings of the industry or of the solutions that have been brought to market so far. Some of the things we're touching upon today are not on the market yet, of course, but they will be hopefully in a couple of years. Sometimes it takes longer. Let's talk about all of these things that you mentioned, including fungi, the kingdom of fungi, because by definition it's not plant-based, it's not plants, but we have to definitely give them their space and have to talk about that, because this will be part of the bigger solutions in the future. But let's start with precision fermentation and Chris and Onego, because you are proposing a solution to replacing a very key ingredient in the industry that is used in all kinds of different applications and can have a huge impact if you find a solution that actually works. So if you can tell us a little bit about the company and why precision fermentation is the game changer here, and then of course from the investor perspective is one of the biggest opportunities.
Yes, hi, my name is Chris. I'm from Onego Bio. We're a precision fermentation company making animal-free egg white proteins. Of course, these can be used in all kinds of applications, of course, from baking, from pasta, from cakes, all kinds of confectionaries, other things like that. Of course, those are the kind of traditional things that you would use egg for, but I guess egg is used in so many different things. There's a lot of opportunity for that, and of course, we are trying to make this as a kind of a drop-in ingredient to replace the animal product. but it also brings some interesting opportunities in terms of, let's say, like vegan products or something like that. Let's say a plant-based product where you would have wanted to have egg, some protein to bind it together, to like stick it together, whereas now I think some of the labels are using carboxymethyl cellulose, some kind of codes for putting things in, which is probably not as optimal or seen as a really good thing. So you could also now start creating new ingredients from precision fermentation that you could mix with plant-based products, for instance, or cell-cultured products. So you start to think that you could start combining these different realms of things where you have a, let's say, egg white ingredient that goes into a plant-based matrix to stick it together. One of the other thing I want to mention about precision fermentation, it shouldn't always be seen as ingredients. Let's say we were just talking shortly about like cultured products like seafood. One of the big investment opportunities I see is that in a cultured seafood or cultured meat area, what precision fermentation can actually do is provide the let's say the growth factors and the types of food that those cells need to grow. And actually what's one of the biggest limitations of that being really profitable or achievable through cultured cells is that you need to provide all of the, let's say, BSA, this bovine serum albumin, or the growth factors that are needed to promote the growth. And that's actually a huge cost in the whole system now. But through precision fermentation, you could actually now produce those factors in a very cheap and safe and inexpensive way, which would then kind of drive that industry into a bit more profitable state and scalable way. So I think that's, for me, outside of that, I think that's one great opportunity from precision fermentation.
Thanks a lot. And now onto Pemdic and CP Foods. You are one of the biggest companies in Asia in the conventional, if you like, agro and food space, actually a giant in that space, and also very much interested in developing the alternative protein part of your business model. So where are you at, and what are you mostly interested in?
Yeah, so CP Foods is quite a large company, but all protein is a completely new business for us. And so we are actually quite agnostic about the source of the protein. So be it plant-based, microprotein, precision fermentation, cultivated, for us, we do not have any preference. So if the technology is good, the performance is good, then we can go for any other. We can go for any of the options. So right now we are mainly focused on plant-based, but I think looking forward to the future, what I'm probably most excited about right now is microprotein. And why that is because I think when we talk about the challenges facing plant-based, we like to talk about taste, texture, and cost, that we are still far from parity with animal meat right now. And most of the innovations coming into the field, you can either improve one or two things, but not all three. And actually, most likely you'll be improving the taste or the texture, but then you'll be increasing the cost, which makes it harder for the consumers to accept that. But with microprotein, I think there's a good potential that you can actually solve all three all in one go. I mean, corn has already been around for 30, 40 years. They've already proven that you can scale this process up to scale and also at a very competitive cost. So now it's more about trying to find the right solutions in microprotein that can take the product performance and the diversity that it can do beyond what corn is doing right now. Yeah.
Can you go a bit deeper into what you are doing there with microprotein, or what you're already working on?
Yeah, sure. So my role at CP Foods is on open innovation. So basically, it's very much the title of this panel. So trying to look beyond the corner and try to find the startups with the game-changing innovations, and then find partnerships with them. So what we normally do is that we want to leverage their innovation while coupling that with the size and the scale that CP offers. So we like to see us kind of like the gateway to Asia for these startups. And also we want to help them scale their technology.
Thanks. Then let's go a bit deeper into the mycoprotein area with Marilis, because you already mentioned the seafood alternatives are not there yet, and mycoprotein could be a way of overcoming the shortcomings that we have there. So what do you think needs to happen to leverage this fungi kingdom, and what kind of shortcomings of the plant-based solution so far will it solve?
I'll start from the last question. So having worked in Finless Foods before, who is working in the Bay Area on cell-based tuna, and who actually launched their first product plant-based. So they started with the vision of cell-based, and they're still working on it, but they first came to the market with a plant-based product. I still feel like there's nothing similar to the cells, the way in terms of how they actually pack proteins. So the way they can pack proteins into a single cell and provide that nutrition from the animal cell is not comparable in my mind to any plants out there, or even in the mycoprotein. If we talk about how exactly how much protein we can pack into a small space. So that's my one thing. So if we are trying to go for the ultimate holy grail, which is the identical product in terms of nutrition, I think we can come close with mycoprotein. I think plants are going to stay a bit further back in terms of nutrition, in the same way that it is already present in the animal cells. So that's why I'm a big proponent of the cell-based future when it comes to identical nutrition and identical, I mean, even your allergies are identical because of the proteins being the same. But mycoprotein has a very unique capacity to provide the texture of the seafood, and then maybe not necessarily in a raw version, so like a raw salmon or a raw tuna, but specifically when it's like cooked whitefish, or when it's like a texture that is already where the proteins have gone through the thermo treatment, so they have denatured and they form this specific structure that is more flaky than a piece of salmon or tuna that is raw and that can be just an experience in the mouth in terms of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's, if you've had a very fatty piece of tuna, for example, otoro, it's not a taste experience, it's more like a texture experience. It's a melting product in your mouth that just covers your whole tongue and the whole thing, and it's just slips through, versus like having a cooked fish. It's a very different sensory experience, and I feel like mycotechnologies can really excel there. But when it comes to that sushi piece in a sushi restaurant, I'm very excited for the cell-based to ace it there.
Great. So let's go into cell-based then, maybe, and you can continue there. Where are we at now at the moment, and why is it taking so long? From the investor perspective, there's the problem that it doesn't really fit for many of them, like into their model of the VC model, because the timelines are just longer. So some of them stay away completely, and some have become more cautious because some things are not working out the way it looked like a few years ago. There was more euphoria around CellEgg. So you're still very enthusiastic about it. I know that, but yeah, tell us about the current state of things there.
I absolutely am. In my mind, it's not a question of if it's going to be the future of food. I mean, I think future food is going to be very diverse when it comes to the opportunities we have to eat in the next decade or two, or even in the next few years. But when it comes to cell-based technology compared to the traditional way of producing meat at the moment, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And that when is the magic ball that every investor wishes they have, or even a consumer, to know when is the right time to invest. So I love to bring this example that I've heard 1,000 times, which is like, you can put up your hand if you came here with a horse, you know? No one probably did. Everyone used a car, and some of you might have used a Tesla, right? And then when these lights are around us, no one went out to get some whale blubber to make that happen, right? So we have technologies that are fundamentally going to change the way we produce things, not the way we live, because we're going to enjoy the things we're still enjoying, which is that piece of meat from that flesh, from that animal, with the same nutritional, with the same sensory properties, and maybe in the future more personalized and even better. So for me, it's a question of when, not if. And when I joined Finless in 2019, I was told the whole time that yes, soon the US is going to regulate this industry. The year is 2023 now. We've gone a long way. We have the FDA green light, so now it's just about the USDA confirming that this facility looks good and clean to produce in. So we are very close, and there are rumblings that later this year, long-awaited products will come to the market in the Bay Area. Still in that it's not an if and when thing, so I hope that when is actually later this year.
Yeah, there have been those rumblings for quite a while, but it looks good this year from what I hear as well. What will it change once we got to that stage in the Bay Area? That's where it all starts, maybe. But then what next?
Yeah, funnily enough, my background is in food science, and in the last decade or more, when I look at food innovation, it's always come out of California for some reason. And having lived there, I didn't quite figure out why, but it was definitely happening there, and then rolling across the whole world. There are quick followers everywhere. And when it happened, I think that there will be a shift inside of the industry, meaning that we will have one theory is that we will have less people working in the food industry because we're able to more automate this industry and not need as much, let's say, human brute force to make this happen. But I think that we will actually need more people to be involved because the process is going to get more complicated, and when we have more complex solutions to solve the future of food, I think we'll actually need more people to make this into reality. So I'm not in the worrying but what will happen to our farmers? I think the transition will take some time, but there will be more need in the industry than less.
Yeah, that's a different discussion and a different panel talking about that transition and transformation of agriculture and of the whole industry. But let's stay with cellular agriculture and the investment opportunity and the timelines, and maybe include, although it's not totally correct, but it's usually put together with precision fermentation. Do you see the same obstacles, and are you sharing the same optimism, Chris?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. And as I said, there are things that you can do with adding to the cultures, like say even you're growing seafood-based protein, but there's no fat really there. So I always been thinking that there are ways to use either yeast or even fungi to provide the fat for the matrix. So trying to now culture those or I don't know, formulate them together somehow, because of course a piece of tuna, of course, or whether it's salmon, for instance, has a bit higher fat content in that way. So it's probably a good idea, and I think that can come from a precision fermentation, or is it a culture of some fungi that has the right kind of fat content? And actually what you can do as well with a yeast-based system, if you're thinking about precision fermentation, if you also consider the fats, you can actually engineer the fats to be like the fish fat. So you can actually do more advanced things if you're able to engineer the length of the chains of the fatty acids and things like this. So it doesn't have to be, it can be like nature in a way. So that is also what I know some colleagues have been doing in Finland. They've been studying how to make the fats in yeast that are like beef or like the animal forms, so that it tastes like it should. So that can be all done, to say, animal-free. So I think that's another thing to add to that whole spectrum of things. There's still much more in terms of how you can get the sensory experience that you really want to achieve through these other technologies to add in. So I think everything shouldn't be seen as a pure, I only do plant-based or I do cell-based, but you should start mixing these things to bring more value to that and to give you the experiences that you need to still have.
Sure, but let's say from the investor perspective, and not only from the very impact-driven investor side like Sustainable Food Ventures or also ProVeg, if the investor wants a clear outcome and gain in a 10 years timeline or so, there is some doubt about precision fermentation and cultivated meat and seafood because it just takes so long and it takes so much money. And maybe from a corporate perspective, then Pemdicis is something that you're talking about at your company, is something you're actually investing in.
Yeah, so cultivated meat is also something that we are deeply interested in. So I think I've probably tasted more than 5 prototypes so far. So I think I've been quite impressed by what they're able to achieve in terms of like the closeness to animal meat. Definitely blows plant-based meat out of the water. I think the main challenge for cultivated meat in the next few years would be trying to find the right balance between improving the efficiency of growing the cells, but at the same time figuring out how to fit in more innovations, maybe not from biology, but from fields that you can control more. For example, using post-processing so that you can just use this cell slurry that I think some people might demonize, but I think I'm completely fine with that. If you can use post-processing to help with the texturization of that, and you already see the improvement in the product performance compared to plant-based, I think there's no issue with that. So that will really help to simplify the process, because if you talk about doing really the full cultivated meat treatment, so not just growing the cells and proliferating them, but also differentiating them and then growing them into proper tissues, you are adding more difficulty for yourself. And maybe you can already achieve something that's good enough by relying more on like the traditional engineering technologies.
Right, so we covered those areas that are not in the title, but let's do justice to plant-based now as well and talk about plant-based and not only about the shortcomings and give that area a bad name, but let's talk about the biggest investment opportunities there. I see a big German retailer represented here, and I know that they are looking for short-term or shorter-term solutions. So cell, egg, and precision fermentation is a bit too far away, but it's still interesting. So where are we at in plant-based, and what are the biggest opportunities there that investors could be excited about? Starting with you.
Yeah, happy to go into the main topic as well. So just yesterday, I received an email. I used to live in Netherlands briefly, and they have this restaurant / like exhibition / like event center called Mediamatic in Amsterdam. And I received an invitation for a dog dinner. So it was a dinner for you and your dog. And if you wanted, you could bring an extra human with you. And then you could also do pairing with drinks. So they didn't say right away if it's like different drinks for dogs or if it's just like a wine list for humans. I didn't get into those details, but I feel like seeing our companions or pets becoming more and more, as our very, very treasured family members all across the globe, I feel like sometimes investors do a very strict division between we invest in human food versus we invest in the pet space. And I feel the ones that like are excluding pet are missing actually one of the biggest opportunities. If we just took the US pets and pooled them all together, they would be like the third biggest nation in terms of consuming meat, for example, in the whole world. So they're a big consumer out there. And like not just from the point of impact, if they ate plant-based meat, it would be great for the planet. It's also for their own health. So there was a recent study in UK with 2,500 dogs, not paid by the industry, not paid by the meat or plant or anything in the middle industry. And they figured out that over the course of a dog's life, if they ate a plant-based traditional kibble, so that's like that brown thing that you would put on a ball and then put something on top, on average, a dog on a plant-based kibble versus a meat-based kibble lived 1.5 years longer. So, I mean, it's good for the plant-based producer. You have a customer for a longer lifespan, but actually, in the end of the day, you can enjoy those extra 1.5 years with your favorite companion. So I feel like we're not talking enough about our biggest, best friends who are big consumers of meat-based products and usually, getting the tail end of the product. So switching their diet to a plant-based option, and specifically dogs. I know that cats are obligatory carnivores and they're even more pickier than dogs. Dogs can even, go for their own poop if they're very, adventurous. So, but cats will never really do that. So I think cat food can be plant-based if it's supplemented right with taurine and all sorts of other ingredients, but cell-based could have a bit more of a scene maybe in the more distant future, as we're talking about the distant future as well.
Yeah, super interesting. We have to talk about food and pet food because it's a big area of impact and of also investment potential, for sure. And the data that we are seeing is really exciting. So not only for dogs but also for cats and other species, it can work and it can be replaced. So, and there's the hybrid or like these fortified products that could make a difference. The cool thing about dogs and cats is that they are not as demanding in terms of texture and replacing something like a 100% like we would expect for human grade food. So that's one area. But for the human food, for plant-based food, Bimdij, what are you expecting to happen there, and what needs to happen still if you want to see innovation in the shorter term there?
Yeah, so I think in the short term, the thing that would make the biggest impact would be innovations in fats. I think fat plays such a big part in the sensory experience, both in the taste, the aroma, the mouthfeel. And I think right now, they are probably the reason for the shortcomings in plant-based meat products right now. So I think there are companies that are working on fats made by precision fermentation or cultivated fat. But as we mentioned, I mean, that might be a bit more longer term. So I think in the short term, companies that can work with plant fats but find ways to modulate that to give them properties that behave more like animal fats. So like lipid, for example, I think that would be very interesting. And if they can get to the right product performance, that would be a boon for the whole industry.
Yeah, we're talking not only about end products, but of course also about functional ingredients and even platforms to provide those. Where do you see the biggest potential there in terms of technology to make plant-based better apart from fats?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting also that we are seeing like companies becoming like ingredients companies that are fully dedicated to the plant-based meat space. So guys like Chiru or Motif. So I think they are starting to come out with some quite exciting solutions. So we hope to see more of that. So I think that will really be helpful.
Let's open this scope a little bit and maybe go away from only food tech, because there's a lot of overlap with climate tech. Do you think from an investor's perspective and from a company perspective that this is a paradigm shift that we need to see, and then it will bring way more investment into the space, because a lot of food tech is actually climate tech? Maybe starting again with you, Marilis.
A few thoughts come. So this is not my idea or dream, but I'm a bit afraid of it, but I'm also entertained and like excited about it. So a good friend who started Integriculture, which is the Japanese cell-based meat company, he showed me his, it wasn't a pitch deck, it was just like, imagine how the future could be. And literally the way it looked like, it was this super concentrated area filled with like really high buildings and production facilities where food production was like wrapped in different materials. So it could be steel, it could be plastic, it could be something novel, and food is just produced inside of that, and it's just a concentrated area. And then outside, it was just green and lush wilderness. And I was like, well, could that really be that we just like operate in a really, let's say, different way of material wrapping food and then produce it without actually like different plant cells inside, different animal cells inside, different like mycoproteins inside of materials, and then there's this wilderness around us that is filled with us humans sometimes, but mostly just all the other species that are trying to survive here and hopefully thrive in the future. He said that we wouldn't go out to the wilderness because we can only do what we can do there is break. So we would just like stay in the inside of our own life. But I feel like we could have both. We could still join the wilderness where we can all not just survive, but thrive together.
Thanks. It was a very almost poetic answer to my question about about the overlap of climate tech and food tech. Let's leave it at that, I'd say, because we're running out of time. I would like to start one last quick round of input about which area, which tech approach, and which startup, if you want to name one, you are most excited about. Maybe starting with Chris, naming Onego, or if you want another startup. And precision fermentation, I guess.
Well, no, I mean, I think that related to, if we just got on this topic of climate tech in a way, I actually like a lot the, say kind of like a, like fungal leather or like leather replacement strategies, because these also can come from food tech in a way that the biomass that you generate from the cultivation could be used for some other kind of material. And I think also, for instance, Bolt Threads, I think I'll just name one company that they're doing this type of like cultured fungal leather. And I think that is a nice technology to look further into.
And each, very briefly, area, tech approach, startup, maybe, if you want to name one.
I think just again going back to plant-based fats, because I think that probably make the biggest impact in the short term. So I think for me, Lipid is doing very good work with their fat that can behave like a solid fat even after cooking. Yeah.
Marilis?
Yeah, I'd give two advices and flip it a bit. I would not name a startup, but instead name a few accelerators that I would look at and see what they come out with their demo days. So for example, ProVeg, Big Idea Ventures, Y Combinator, IndieBio, Brink, like you have a few of like bits and bytes, you have a few great ones that I would keep an eye on and then see what comes out of them. And if you are a founder and want to start something and change in the food system, I would look at the things that you love in the traditional way of producing things, and then look at the technologies and kind of like make a matrix and decide if there is something that is still missing there in terms of like that product and that technology coming together. Of course, it has to make sense, but you know, you can find that answer in yourself or someone around you.
Thanks. So we're wrapping it up. It was a really nice round of topics we covered, of perspectives on those. It was way beyond plant-based and the burger, but we are already way beyond that, so it's necessary to tackle all these different technologies and areas. And I think there's more optimism than some of the headlines we are reading about that space seem to suggest. So if you want to talk about investments or startups in the space, talk to us, reach out. And I hope you see the big opportunities there and get active there if you're not active there yet. Thanks so much for having us.